It's only 8 and the streets are already packed with costumed visitors, some to show off, others to blend in, but all to celebrate the magical night of Halloween, the one night a year where we can pretend to be the scariest thing we can think of. This is your spooky spot of the NECA Toys Trick or Treat Ultimate Sam. The doorbell rings, the cry goes out, trick or treat. But wait, what's actually going on during this ghostly All Hallows Eve? Something eerie and unexpected? Something splattered and spooky? Something that brings ghouls, vampires, and werewolves in the night? Answer the door, a shocking surprise awaits. Ultimate Sam here was a viewer-requested re-review. In fact, several of you, the viewing audience, reached out to me via messaging and asked me if I would consider going back and looking at the Ultimate Sam, but maybe keeping it during the spooky season of Spottober. Well, now that I'm looking over at my calendar, I see producer Tony has scribbled a whole bunch of garbage all over it. What does that say? Getting hair done. We definitely got to get different calendars. But looking, though, at the calendar, now we're into October, so what a better time to go back and have a look at Ultimate Sam. Before we look at the tricks and the treats that come included with the figure, how we do some size comparisons with maybe smaller scale NECA figures. Seeing as these weren't around at the time that we first looked at Ultimate Sam, here he is next to the Ultimate Puppet Master figures. First of all, here he is next to Blade. We can also bring in Pinhead. Get him displayed next to Torch. And I think we are actually missing one. Oh, there he is right there, Tunneler. Now again, like when you're looking at them now, Sam looks like a giant, but they're scaled right accordingly, I feel, to the way that they are in the films as well. We can also bring in Tiffany. Of course, you know I would have to compare these, and we'd also bring in Chucky. Again, giving you a good idea. Sam, when you do compare him with all the other characters, he is notably a lot taller. He's supposed to be more like a toddler. He's definitely not a doll, but at least it gives you an idea of how he stacks up with other smaller scale NECA figures. The figure comes with quite a lot of treats. Let's first have a look at his jack-o'-lanterns. The first one, being the more elaborate of the two, does, as you can see, have the flame jetting out from the top here. The pumpkin, I believe, does appear in the film, later into the film, but the fire end of things were usually used more for the marketing and the poster of the movie. Now, the flame effect is accomplished by doing the translucent molding of orange plastic, and it does have some varying colors to it. In some places, when you have the light hitting it, it comes across almost like a yellow. In other places, more of a dark orange, and in other places, more of a clear color. The idea is that this is supposed to illuminate, and it illuminates by pushing it down one time to light it up, and push it down a second time to turn it off. You'll see the 2 times that I've already done this, it doesn't work. Unfortunately, the batteries that were initially installed, you can see right here at the bottom of the pumpkin, the batteries are already in there, but unfortunately have died since the last time I looked at this figure. Probably something I should have done first before hitting record. It doesn't light too much of it up, but at least it does give you a nice effect when you're having it on display. I mean, it's more than elaborate enough that I would just display it like this with the fire out and not even go in and really turn it on and off anyways. It's a shame, though, just at the time of re-reviewing this figure, the battery has sadly deceased. Anyways, looking, though, at the molding, the sculpting of this pumpkin, I get a little crazy, admittingly, when it comes to Halloween time. I usually buy a lot more pumpkins than I think I need, and then I go out and I buy even more pumpkins. I like to go to the farmers' pumpkin fields where you get those really elaborate pumpkins where they have the really curly stems or they have really elaborate looking colors or spots all over them. I'm that guy. I'm the guy that fills up his trunk with tons of pumpkins. And every year I tend to carve at least 1, maybe 2 pumpkins. I might actually consider this year sculpting one of them to look like this, with this sort of lined mouth, little notches for its mouth and stars for its eyes. I'd have to go with a more shorter, squatter pumpkin at least. And I'd have to go with one that's a little more discolored, as you can see here. This one isn't a bright orange. It has a few places that are bright, but otherwise it's more of a very dark cream color or a very muddy looking gray. The sculpting on it is quite good, though. Even these little almost warts on the side of the pumpkin. I kind of wish that the pumpkin was a little bit brighter, like a more of a brighter orange, but I do like the fact it's got like a varying degree of different colors going for it. Now there's this pumpkin, rolling his head in the process, and then there's also this pumpkin here as well. Now this one doesn't benefit from having the flames, nor does it have to worry about having batteries installed. As you can see, it's just a sculpted jack-o'-lantern, and might even this year decide to sculpt two pumpkins, this size and this shape, to make it look similar to the ones from the Trick or Treat movie. This one I really like as well. I mean, really, you could use these pumpkins if you're not planning to display them with Sam, and I actually don't even display Sam all year round anyways. I usually bring a lot of my Sam stuff out mid-September, and a lot of the Halloween stuff stays out till about mid-November. I get as much mileage as I can stretch out from putting out my trick-or-treat Halloween decorations before I have to start thinking about Christmas. Oh, we're thinking about Christmas already. But I do like this pumpkin. If you don't want to use it for Sam, by all means, just display it with, say, like a Michael Myers, for example. But you get two of those. We'll put those to the side. Nice little pieces to show to the side of Sam. Something else that you can also show to the side of Sam is his sack. How many S's did I just say right there? The sack, as you can see, has almost like a burlap texturing to it. It's stained, so you can see like the bottom of it looks like it's been dragged across the ground. It's wet, it's dirty, it's muddy. And there are a few little patches where you can see like there's some blood staining there. Really, really nice looking sack here. Sadly, though, he doesn't actually hold it in his hand. You could, in theory, lift this up and try to wedge it in between his fingers so it looks like he's actually dragging the bag behind him. The thing about it, though, is you will want to be careful. I'm doing it right now just to show you. If you lift this up so many times, you'll start seeing it's going to start ripping the plastic. See right there? There's a line that's starting to develop. That's not what we want to see. And I feel too many times of lifting it up like this, it's going to probably rip right through it. So I'm going to keep it more in its docile state and have it just displayed alongside Sam. I kind of wished that they could have included a second sack. Is anybody really asking for that? I'm really asking for that. I would have liked if they could have included a second sack, specifically with the longer neck, that could have actually fit into his hand, instead of one that's just going to be displayed alongside of him. Other accessories he comes included with, some candy. Candy's not bad, is it? Well, first of all, let's pick this one up so I can actually hold on to it. He gets two variations of his candy, first of which is his jack-o'-lantern lollipop. I believe he uses that to kill Emma at the beginning of the movie. That's what happens if you don't follow the rules of trick-or-treating. Several companies have released full-scale versions of this lollipop. I happen to have, I think, 2 of them in the Halloween stores that are open right now. Yay, the Halloween stores are open right now. They actually have real lollipops from Trick or Treat. I don't remember. I think they did have the bite mark already straight through the lollipop. I don't think they're the full size because that would just defeat the purpose completely. But a nice little trinket that you can have held in his hand. Or he also has this as well, which makes more the appearance later into the movie when he's with Mr. Krieg, spending some quality time with an elderly person. You can see that this one does have the X-Acto knife blade sticking out of it. Sinister, isn't he? And again, either one of these could be held in his hand. We're going to go ahead and pick the figure up. And with the straight stock hand, I was going to go with head sculpt. With the stock hand that he already has in his socket, you can actually have him displayed with the candy bar. If you do want to display him, though, with the lollipop, this hand isn't going to cut it. It isn't going to cut. I was going to say cut the cheese. It isn't really going to slice it. As you can see, it sits way too loose. It's going to drop straight through his hand. So he actually comes with this hand, which just has a mild variation to the one he's already got. As you can see, it's just got a more of a narrower grip. Cut the cheese. We're going to go ahead, just remove the hand very carefully, just to free the peg from the socket. I'm going to replace it with this hand, which again, if you have a memory of a goldfish, we just finished talking about this. This one has a slightly smaller grip. And that just fits the lollipop. Still fits a little loose, but it certainly does the job a lot better than the one that was already in his hand, or in the socket. So it comes with those. Then we can move on to, well, you know what, before we get down to looking at all the other things, because they're all mostly heads by now, let's basically start this part of this review, this chapter in this review, actually looking at Sam himself. I really like the look of this Sam. Now, I was a bigger fan, I think, at the time of the retro cloth Sam, because he had more the draping, natural draping fabric. But if you are somebody that isn't as keen on collecting the retro cloth figures and you want just the more ultimate figures, then you really can't get a better figure like this. Now, there was the Cult Classics Sam, which very few people actually picked up at the time because nobody really knew what movie he was from. I picked up that figure, and I've actually reviewed him several times if you want to go back and have a look at that on the channel. But this is definitely one that has a lot more articulation going for him. He's of a toddler's size, so of course he's going to be a lot bigger than the likes of, well, again, let's just reach off to the camera here and bring in Chucky. Chucky's supposed to be designed as a doll, obviously. Sam is supposed to be more of a toddler, so he's going to be notably a lot bigger than Chucky. Why have they not done yet a Child's Play movie where Chucky is out for Halloween? I think they actually have hinted that for the Chucky series. Definitely looking forward to that, which actually should be starting soon as well. I'm getting off on a tangent here. But yeah, I think proportionately he fits the sizing of what Sam would be. I think at one point I thought that he should have been a little bit shorter, but then watching the movie so frequently every single year, I've come to more the conclusion that I think that's the proper size for Sam. Could he have been a little bit shorter? Maybe like just cut the torso off just a little bit more, but I think he's proportionally the right size. And of course he is wearing his onesie pajama, complete with the trapdoor on the back. I like the fact that they've really dirtied up the pajamas as well. That it's not clean and bright. It's bright orange, yes, but it does have a lot of dirt and stuff still on it, and a lot of little sewn-on patches. He does have the fingerless gloves. Everybody was wearing fingerless gloves. And of course he does have a really nice burlap sack mask. Now the retro cloth version of this guy would have been able to have the mask removed. You can still do that, but you have to actually take the whole head off, and then you have to replace it with the other head sculpts that he comes included with. Most of the time, I usually display him just with the sack mask. I mean, the benefit, of course, of always getting the benefit of getting more than one of these is that you can then have one figure displayed with this mask, and then you can have the other one displayed with his unmasked portrait. Speaking of unmasked portraits, that sounds like a bit of a segue. He comes with, of course, the reveal, that final chapter when he's with Mr. Krieg. He has the unmasked portrait, which is more fitting of a jack-o'-lantern. I love the fact that he's the spirit of Halloween, and of course, unmasked, he's going to look like a jack-o'-lantern. Now, the neat thing about this one, we'll just put the figure down here for 1 second. Whoops, not knock him over in the process. There we go. The neat thing about this one is it does have an open and closed mouth. And the sculpt work on the inside, where you can sort of see the top of his tongue here and all the teeth, the little tiny teeth that he has inside. It's a really neat looking sculpt. It's such a clever design for Sam, and I can certainly see why he's on so much merchandise nowadays when it comes to Halloween. You go into Halloween stores, I almost feel like there's more Sam merchandise than there is Michael Myers, which is somewhat really ironic considering that Michael Myers was the face of Halloween. It seems now it's been replaced by Sam. Sam merchandise is everywhere. You can see little stitches there on the bottom of his mouth. It kind of looks like little pumpkin seeds escaping from his mouth. And the sculpting there on the back of the head. Now, there's two variations of this particular head sculpt. There's this one, and then there's the one that has the entry wounds of the shotgun. You can see right there. The heads don't seem too different from one another, and then both benefit from the fact that you can't open and close the mouth. But this is good, of course, if you want to have him leaning against the wall with the shotgun blast on the side of his face. And then certainly while we're still talking about things being blasted off, of course, you also remember as well that he did have the blown off hand, which actually is the other accessory not mentioned earlier, but I'll still mention it now. This one has the little end trails. And as you'll remember, he pulls the hand in and connects it back to his arm. So you really can't kill Sam. Just such a really clever character design. Now, this doesn't attach necessarily to his form. I guess really if you wanted to, you could always try to take the figure's hand off. Like this. I'm trying to remember if it is this side. I believe it is, yeah, because thumbsies go in. But we're going to go ahead and just remove this hand. Again, very careful to remove the peg. You can twist it back and forth. There we go. Pop it off. And sort of, you can kind of feed it in there. But there's really no designated peg that goes specifically into the socket. You can kind of just sort of pretend. Just use your imagination. And just have it kind of draped to the side of the figure's arm. Let's go ahead and get that hand back in there. If you do want to change out the head, speaking of changing things, go ahead and just grab the torso and just wiggle this off, pop it off from a very easy to remove ball peg, I might also say. This is also softer plastic. Not the top necessarily, but at least the lower end of his mask is a softer plastic. Take the head that you want to go with, and this just pops back onto the ball peg. Put a little bit of pressure on there, and there we've got Sam with the unmasked head. This is what he looked like, obviously, with the mask. This is what he looks like without the mask. If you sort of want something then in the middle, he also has this one as well. He's put the mask back on, and as you can still see, the bottom end of his jaw is still visible. And again, to remove that, just pop this one back into place. There we go. And it's slightly deformed, of course, because the mask has stretched. You see it's got the mouth opening there as well. It's a slightly, like I said, slightly deformed head sculpt from this one, but it also gives you an option available as well if you want to display the figure like this as well. It's such a difficult thing really with Sam because he's got so many different ways to display the figure. If you count this head sculpt and then you count this head sculpt and then of course you count the 2 unmasks, I mean, I would almost even want to get a second one of these. And surprisingly enough, I have yet to pick up a second one of these Sams because of all the different ways I can actually display this figure out for every Halloween. Maybe I'll just go back to this head sculpt because at least that way we can look at the articulation on the figure. So when it comes to his head moves down, up, back, and forth. And you can also rotate the head all the way around because, of course, it sits on the ball joint. There also is a secondary ball joint, which you may or may not be able to see. It's just at the base of the neck here. So when you are moving this down, you can see now why I've decided to go with the unmasked head sculpt. It allows then the neck to move freely also on its own. So he has one here and then one at the top. The neck, yes, is a little discolored. It doesn't quite match the coloring of his head, but most of the time, I'm sure most people are probably going to be displaying him with a burlap sack mask anyways. But it's just slightly an off color to the rest of the coloring of his face. Then we get to his arms. His arms hinge out. Not, mind you, at a full 90 degrees. You're just getting a little less than that. Still tight, surprisingly, even after the length of time I've had this figure in my collection. It's nice to see that the joints and the shoulders are still nice and tight. But you get almost, just close but no cigar, about 90 degrees. Rotate the arms all the way around. He has a double hinge on the elbow. There's one there, one there. So you get those double hinges happening. You can also rotate the arm, and you can rotate the lower end of the arm as well. And the hands also, of course, rotate also back and forth. You can hinge those also this way. Now, when it comes to this part of his body, for obvious reasons, he's all contained inside like a rubbery plastic bodysuit. Because of that, he doesn't necessarily have upper torso crunches or anything where you can actually move the torso about. You kind of feel like there's something working behind the scenes, but there's very little that you can actually do to access that. Then we get to the legs that I'm tapping frivolously on. Either way there, you can actually split the legs out to about there. You can bring the legs forward, bring the legs back. It has a bend at the knee, which for obvious reasons, you can also rotate the lower leg as well. Little bit of unfortunate paint here. It looks almost like it's unfinished orange paint, but really, to be fair, like when you're looking at the rest of it, there's also discolorations on the rest of his suit as well. So even that little bit, I'm going to be probably having the legs straight anyways. Yeah, you see a little bit from the side, and that's probably just only on my figure. Then we get the actual feet of the footed pajamas. The feet go up and down. You can also rock them back and forth as well. And just in case, yeah, you're curious, Sam does have pegals on the undersides of his feet. Sam is a fantastic figure. The only real crime to him is the fact that he doesn't come out in my collection all year round. Most of the time, I'm very specific, I find, when it comes to my collecting. Certainly when it comes to displaying it. Like the Christmas stuff. We're not really want to talk about Christmas, but the Silent Night, Deadly Night stuff, the retro cloth, Billy and Ricky, those only come out at Christmas time. And really the same can be said as well when it comes to Sam. Michael Myers usually is displayed all year round. I guess he gets the title of being able to go out all year round, but I kind of like the idea of just only bringing Sam out during Halloween. He comes out for Halloween like he did in the movie. You have to follow the rules, yada, yada, yada. And then he goes back into my collection space until he comes out again the following year. And because of that, I think I enjoy having him more on display for those short periods of time because I'm not getting to see him all year round. Like with, again, Halloween, he only comes out during that time. And that's the same thing, same rules, because we all have to follow the rules of Halloween. Sort of the same rules that apply when it comes to displaying him. He only comes out in my collection space, again, every Halloween. NECA has been good to us when it's come to trick-or-treat merchandise. Granted, all the things that they've released so far have been Sam related, but keeping in mind that they did the cult classic Sam even long before Sam was a popular thing. Then they did the Ultimate Sam, which we looked at in this review, and then followed it up with a retro cloth Sam, which is one of my personal favorite retro cloth figures as well. Yes, we have been spoiled with Trick or Treat, but I hope we're going to eventually get other figures based on the movie that aren't Sam related. I'm thinking bus ride kids. That's what I usually just call them, the bus ride kids. The creepy kids dressed in costumes at the back of the bus. I don't want to give too much away if you haven't seen yet the movie. And why we even have this discussion? You haven't yet seen Trick or Treat. What are you missing out? But I hope at some point we do get ourselves the bus ride kids, all of them, even as either retro cloth figures. Ultimate figures would be nice as well, but maybe just retro cloth bus ride kids. Wrong way, wrong way, wrong way. Make that happen, please, if you do, NECA. I would love to see the bus ride kids get released as retro cloth figures. That's, again, not really their name. That's the name I just give them. But other than that, though, I'm really, really happy with the Ultimate release here of Sam. He comes with all the trinkets that one would want to have for displaying Sam on a shelf, either all year round or, like myself, one who just displays the Sam only about mid-September to about, well, mid-November. Okay, it's more closer to December. I like to stretch out as much Halloween as I possibly can before I have to start worrying about Christmas, but that's the only times that Sam does make an appearance. Bus ride kids, NECA, make it happen. What do you guys think of the Trick or Treat Ultimate Sam? Let me know down below in the comment section. And for your spooky video question for today, of the stories that make up the anthology Trick or Treat, which one is your favorite? I kind of still like Mr. Krieg. That's my personal favorite. And I also like his next door neighbor. What was his next door neighbor's name? Steven. That's right. Steven. I kind of like the kind of the bookends. The beginning story with Steven the neighbor, and then Mr. Krieg at the very end, and you can kind of see how the two are connected when you see Mr. Krieg's story. I really like that also about Trick or Treat, that all the stories are sort of intertwined with one another. You see another story in the movie, and you can spot characters or parts of the movie playing out sort of in the background. Trick or Treat, you got to see it. If you haven't seen it, you have to see it. Yeah, have to see it. If you are new to this channel, thank you, and you're enjoying this content, and you're enjoying this video, hit this video with a like, but make sure as well, please and thank you, that you hit that subscribe button down below. That will ensure that you'll get those notifications. Well, you also have to turn on the bell notification. So yeah, subscribe, bell notification, 2 and 2. Those two things collectively will ensure that you'll get those notifications when new videos are popping up. And speaking of popping up, there will be other spooky-related videos during the month of Spocktober. Promsies. More will be coming. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.